My mom handed me a folder and said, "I used your emergency fund to pay off your brother's mortgage. You'll thank me later." I just smiled and said, "If you think so." An hour later, her phone rang, and I watched her face turn pale as the bank told her the transfer had been reversed. 2 minutes later, headlights pulled into the driveway. Can you imagine saving every single penny for years, working tirelessly, building up this safety net, only for your own mother to steal it? Not just a little bit, but my entire emergency fund, $65,000, to bail out my deadbeat brother. And then, she actually told me, with a smug smile, that I should thank her. "My name's Glenn, I'm 32, and if there's one thing I've always been, it's financially responsible. My whole adult life, I've been meticulous with my money. I'd worked my tail off, sacrificed a lot, and finally, I'd built up a solid $65,000 in my emergency fund. That was my rock, my peace of mind." Then, last Sunday, my mom handed me this folder. She was practically beaming. "I used your emergency fund to pay off Anthony's mortgage," she announced, her voice dripping with pride. "You'll thank me later." I swear, for a second, my world just tilted. But I held it together. I just looked at her and said, "If you think so." She had no idea, absolutely no idea what was coming next. Before I dive deeper into how this family betrayal changed everything, tell me, where are you watching from in the comments? And if this story resonates, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Growing up in Elmhurst, a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago, our family dynamic was clear from early on. My father, he was the rock. A construction foreman, working 60-hour weeks, he drilled it into me. Save first, spend later. Always. He even helped me set up my first savings account when I was just 8 years old. Every birthday, every Christmas, half of any money I got went straight into that account. It wasn't always fun as a kid, you know, but those lessons, they became the foundation of who I am. But my brother, Anthony, 3 years older, and somehow, he dodged every single one of those lessons. Dad tried to instill the same values in him, but Mom, she undermined it at every turn. Anthony wanted the latest video game console. Mom would buy it, even when Dad said no. Anthony crashed his first car 6 months after getting his license. Mom convinced Dad to help buy another one. "Your brother just needs a little more support," she'd tell me, whenever I pointed out the blatant double standard. "You're naturally more responsible." That line always stuck with me. After high school, I pushed hard, got a finance degree from the University of Illinois. I worked part-time, applied for every scholarship, graduated with minimal student debt. My summers? Spent in financial internships, not partying or traveling. Meanwhile, Anthony dropped out of Northern Illinois University after 3 semesters, having spent more time at parties than in classes. My first job was entry-level at a financial services firm in downtown Chicago. I lived with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment, took the L to work every day to save money. Brown-bagged my lunch, limited nights out, systematically paid off my student loans. By 27, I was debt-free, with 2 promotions under my belt. Anthony's career, if you can even call it that, was a revolving door of sales jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a year. Yet, somehow, he always drove newer cars than mine, lived in nicer apartments. When he turned 30, Mom helped him with a down payment on a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Naperville. A house he absolutely couldn't afford on his commission-only income. "Your brother has a certain lifestyle to maintain," Mom explained when I dared to question it. "Appearances matter in sales." Then, 5 years ago, our family dynamics shifted dramatically. My father suffered a fatal heart attack. He was only 58. The loss devastated us all, but it affected Mom and Anthony in unexpected and ultimately destructive ways. Dad had been the only one who ever said no to Anthony. Without that counterbalance, Mom's enabling tendencies went into overdrive. Dad had been smart enough to maintain a substantial life insurance policy, leaving Mom with $750,000. She asked me to help her manage it, and I spent weekends setting up appropriate investments, building a balanced portfolio that would provide income and preserve capital. I explained every single decision to her, making sure she understood. Within the first year after Dad's death, Mom had given Anthony nearly $100,000 for various emergencies, a term that seemed to cover everything from property taxes he hadn't budgeted for to an elaborate vacation to Hawaii, because he needed to de-stress. Meanwhile, my own career continued to advance. I became a certified financial advisor, built a solid reputation. Last year, I got a big promotion and a bonus, which finally allowed me to reach my goal, a $65,000 emergency fund. That's 6 months of expenses, exactly what I recommend to all my clients. I'd recently bought a comfortable 2-bedroom condo in Lincoln Park. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine. I'd even converted the second bedroom into a home office, where I kept all my financial documents in a locked filing cabinet. My mother had an emergency key to my place, something I never, ever thought would be problematic. She'd visit occasionally, bringing home-cooked meals or household items she thought I might need. "I worry about you working so hard," she'd say during these visits, all while simultaneously praising Anthony for his latest impulsive purchase or career change. The double standard had become so normal that I rarely commented on it anymore. Despite the family dynamics, I maintained regular contact with both Mom and Anthony. Sunday dinners at Mom's house had become our tradition after Dad passed away. It was during one of these routine family gatherings that everything came crashing down. That fateful Sunday started like any other family dinner. I arrived at Mom's house around 4 p.m., bringing a bottle of her favorite wine and a dessert from the bakery near my condo. I expected a quiet evening of catching up, enduring the usual subtle comparisons between my boring life and Anthony's exciting one. But when I pulled into the driveway, that gut feeling hit me the moment I saw Anthony's brand new Lincoln Navigator parked in the spot where Dad used to park. It couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, still sporting temporary tags. This struck me as really odd, because just the previous month, Anthony had called me, practically in a panic, asking for advice because he was struggling to make his mortgage payments. "Business has been slow," he'd claimed. "The commission structure changed, and I'm feeling the squeeze." I'd suggested he look into refinancing or possibly downsize from the house that was clearly beyond his means. He'd brushed off my advice, saying, "Things will pick up soon. They always do." Yet here he was, with what had to be an $80,000 SUV sitting in the driveway. I tried to push away the familiar wave of frustration as I rang the doorbell. Anthony himself opened the door, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. "Little brother," he exclaimed, pulling me into a bear hug that smelled of expensive cologne. Perfect timing. Mom just took the lasagna out of the oven. Throughout dinner, I couldn't help but notice the strange atmosphere. Anthony was unusually cheerful, making jokes and refilling wine glasses with enthusiasm. Mom kept giving him knowing glances, and both of them seemed to be sharing a secret that deliberately excluded me. "So, how's the new job going?" I asked Anthony, genuinely curious about what could possibly be financing the luxury vehicle outside. "Oh, same company, but things have really turned around," he said vaguely, exchanging another meaningful look with Mom. As we finished dessert, Mom suddenly stood up. "I have something for you, Glenn," she said, disappearing into her study. When she returned, she was holding a manila folder. "What's this?" I asked as she placed it in front of me. "Open it," she instructed, standing over me with an expression I can only describe as smugly satisfied. Inside was a printout of my bank statement showing a withdrawal of $65,000, the exact amount of my emergency fund. Paperclipped to it was a mortgage statement for Anthony's house, showing a payment of the same amount, clearly marked as payoff amount. I looked up, confused, beginning to feel this creeping sense of dread. "Mom, what is this?" "I used your emergency fund to pay off the remainder of Anthony's mortgage," she announced proudly, as if she had just told me she'd enrolled me in a surprise vacation. "You'll thank me later. Family helps family, and Anthony needed it more than you do. He has a family to support." Anthony had divorced 3 years ago, but had custody of his 2 children every other weekend. Somehow, in my mother's mind, this constituted having a family in a way that justified stealing from me. I felt the blood drain from my face as I struggled to maintain my composure. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. 1,000 questions raced through my mind. How did she access my account? How was this even possible? "You don't need all that money just sitting there," my mother continued, apparently interpreting my shocked silence as contemplation rather than horror. "Your brother was about to lose his house, and now he's secure. Isn't that wonderful?" Anthony, at least, had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, though not nearly as distressed as someone who had just benefited from theft should be. How did you get access to my account? I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. I know where you keep your financial information, honey, Mom said dismissively. I'm still your mother. I was just looking out for both my boys. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She had used her emergency key to enter my apartment, searched through my home office, and somehow obtained enough information to transfer my money without my consent. I stood up abruptly. I need to use the bathroom, I mumbled, needing a moment alone to process what had just happened. Once inside the bathroom, with the door locked, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and logged into my banking app. There it was, a transfer made yesterday to an external account. $65,000. Gone. My entire emergency fund, 5 years of disciplined saving, wiped out in a single, unauthorized transaction. I felt a panic attack building. My chest tightened, and my breathing became shallow as I leaned against the cool tile wall. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, forcing myself to take deep breaths. Think, I whispered to myself. Just think. After a few minutes, I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I needed to appear calm until I could leave and address this properly. I returned to the dining room where Mom and Anthony were chatting casually, as if they hadn't just confessed to financial fraud. So, Mom asked expectantly, "Aren't you going to say anything?" I summoned every ounce of self-control I possessed and simply replied, "If you think so." Her face fell slightly at my lack of gratitude or approval. "Glenn, this is a good thing. Anthony's house is secure now. Family helps family. I need to head home," I said, gathering my jacket. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "But we haven't had coffee yet," Mom protested. "Another time," I said, already moving toward the door. "Thanks for dinner." I could feel their eyes on me as I left, confused by my muted reaction. They had expected either grateful acceptance or an immediate angry confrontation. My composed departure had clearly not been in their script. As soon as I got into my car, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The 20-minute drive from my mother's house to my condo passed in a blur of churning emotions and racing thoughts. The radio remained off as I processed what had just happened and formulated my plan of action. The betrayal cut deep. Not just the theft itself, but the casual way it had been presented, as if I should be happy about it. Memories flashed through my mind. Staying up late, helping Mom understand investment statements after Dad died, showing her how to use online banking, explaining the importance of maintaining good credit scores. All that time spent trying to help her become financially literate, and she had used that knowledge to steal from me. As I pulled into my parking space, a horrifying thought struck me. If she had been in my home office looking through my financial documents, what else might she have accessed? What else might she feel entitled to redistribute in the name of family? Once inside my condo, I went straight to my home office. The filing cabinet appeared untouched. But when I opened the drawer containing my bank statements and account information, I could tell someone had been through it. The folders were arranged slightly differently than my usual meticulous organization system. On my desk, I noticed something else. My checkbook had been moved from its usual spot in the top drawer to sitting on the desktop, partially hidden under some mail. I rarely used checks anymore, but kept them for certain bills. Flipping through the register, I saw nothing unusual, but the fact that it had been moved confirmed my suspicions about how she had gathered my account information. Without hesitation, I picked up my phone and dialed the 24-hour fraud line for my bank. After navigating through several automated prompts, I finally reached a representative. "Thank you for calling Capital Union Bank Fraud Services. This is Jennifer speaking. How can I help you tonight?" "My name is Glenn Thompson," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to report an unauthorized transaction from my savings account." "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Thompson. I'd be happy to help you with this issue. Can you verify the last 4 digits of your social security number and your address for security purposes?" After completing the verification process, I explained the situation as clearly and factually as possible. Yesterday, someone transferred $65,000 from my savings account without my authorization. I just discovered this a few hours ago. "I see the transaction you're referring to," Jennifer confirmed after a brief pause. "This was quite a large transfer. Do you know who might have made this transaction?" This was the difficult part. "Yes, my mother. She admitted to me tonight that she accessed my financial information without permission and initiated the transfer. There was a slight pause on the line. I knew how it sounded. Reporting your own mother for fraud wasn't something the representative likely heard every day. I understand this must be a difficult situation, Mr. Thompson, Jennifer said, her voice softening with sympathy. To clarify, you're saying your mother accessed your account information without your consent and transferred funds without your authorization? That's correct, I confirmed. She used an emergency key to enter my apartment when I wasn't home, went through my financial documents, and somehow managed to transfer the money. She then used it to pay off my brother's mortgage. Thank you for that information. I'm going to flag this as a fraudulent transaction right away, Jennifer assured me. Given the circumstances and the amount involved, we'll need to open an investigation. The good news is that since the transaction was recent, we have a good chance of reversing it, especially with your clear statement that it was unauthorized. What do I need to do next? I asked. I'm sending a fraud claim form to your email right now. Please fill it out with as much detail as possible and submit it as soon as you can. Also, you should consider filing a police report. I know that might be difficult given that it's a family member, but it helps establish the seriousness of your claim. I hesitated at the mention of a police report. Despite everything, the thought of potentially getting my mother arrested gave me pause. Jennifer seemed to sense my hesitation. The police report is recommended, but not absolutely required in your case. Since you've identified the person and have their admission, however, you should be aware that without it, the investigation might take longer. I understand, I replied. I'll complete the fraud claim form tonight. One more thing, Mr. Thompson. I strongly recommend that you change all your passwords, request new bank cards, and consider opening new accounts. If someone has accessed your financial information once, there's a risk they could do so again. After ending the call with Jennifer, I immediately called my friend Scott, who happened to be an attorney specializing in financial crimes. Glenn, it's nearly 10 o'clock. Everything okay? Scott answered, sounding concerned about the late call. Not really, I admitted before explaining the entire situation. Scott listened without interruption until I finished. First of all, I'm really sorry this happened to you, he said. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize, but that doesn't make it any less serious. Your bank was right. You have a strong case for fraud, and the transaction should be reversible. Should I file a police report? I asked, still conflicted about escalating the situation to that level. Legally speaking, yes, you should. It strengthens your case significantly, but I understand your hesitation, Scott replied. Here's what I suggest. Proceed with the bank's fraud investigation and give them your statement about the unauthorized access. Document everything. The admission from your mother, the timing of events, any evidence you have of her entering your apartment without permission for this purpose. What about my apartment security? She still has a key. Change your locks first thing tomorrow, Scott advised without hesitation. You're also within your rights to install security cameras, especially near your home office. Not just for potential future incidents, but to document any attempts to confront you at home. After thanking Scott for his advice, I spent the next 2 hours completing the detailed fraud claim form, attaching screenshots of my account statement showing the unauthorized transfer. I also took photos of my slightly disturbed filing system as evidence that someone had been searching through my financial documents. Before going to bed, I changed all my online banking passwords, ordered new credit and debit cards, and set up additional verification steps for any future large transactions. I also ordered a simple security camera system with next-day delivery and scheduled a locksmith to come first thing in the morning. As I finally lay in bed, exhausted but too wired to sleep, I made the conscious decision not to call or text either my mother or Anthony. Let them wonder about my unusually calm reaction. The bank would be making contact soon enough, and I wanted to be strategic rather than emotional about what would inevitably become a major family conflict. Little did I know just how quickly things would escalate the following day. Monday morning arrived after a night of fitful sleep. I called my office first thing and requested a personal day, explaining to my manager that I had an urgent family situation to handle. Having never taken unexpected time off before, my request was granted without question. The locksmith arrived at 8:30 and changed all the locks, providing me with new keys and a sense of security I hadn't realized I was missing. By 9, I had installed the simple security camera system I'd ordered for overnight delivery, positioning one camera to monitor my front door and another facing my home office. At 10:12, my phone rang. It was the fraud department from my bank calling with an update. Mr. Thompson, this is Michael from Capital Union Bank Fraud Investigations. I'm following up on the claim you filed last night. Yes, thank you for calling, I replied, feeling a knot of tension in my stomach. I wanted to let you know that we've completed our initial review of your case. Based on the information you provided and our verification processes, we've determined this was indeed an unauthorized transaction. We've begun the process of reversing the transfer. Relief washed over me. How long will that take? Since we caught this early and the receiving bank has been cooperative, the funds should be returned to your account within the next 4 to 6 hours. We're also issuing you new account numbers as you requested, and those details will be sent via secure message to your updated email. After thanking Michael profusely, I hung up feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. However, I knew the financial resolution was only the beginning of what would likely be a painful family confrontation. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Have you thought more about our discussion last night? Anthony is so relieved. I hope you understand why this was necessary. I stared at the message for several minutes before responding with a deliberately vague, yes, I have. I spent the next hour researching information about financial abuse and family dynamics, trying to prepare myself emotionally for what was coming. Just after 12:30, my phone erupted with my mother's ringtone. Taking a deep breath, I answered. What did you do? Her voice was shrill, almost unrecognizable with panic and anger. The bank just called Anthony saying there's a problem with the mortgage payment. They said the transaction is being reversed due to a fraud claim. Did you report me to the bank? Despite having anticipated this call, the reality of her indignation still shocked me. There was no recognition that she had done anything wrong, only outrage that I had taken steps to recover my money. I didn't authorize that transfer, I stated calmly. So, yes, I reported an unauthorized transaction to my bank. How could you do this to your own family? She demanded, her voice cracking with emotion. I was helping Anthony. That's what families do. They help each other. Mom, you entered my apartment without permission, went through my private financial documents, and transferred $65,000 without my consent. That's not helping family. That's theft. Don't you dare use that word, she gasped. I'm your mother. I was doing what was best for everyone. Best for Anthony, maybe. Not for me. You have a good job. You don't need all that money just sitting there. Anthony was going to lose his house. Then Anthony should have come to me directly or figured out his own financial solution, I countered. You had no right to make that decision for me. There was a brief silence before her voice turned cold. I can't believe how selfish you've become. Your father would be so disappointed in you. The invocation of my father, who had taught me financial responsibility and would have never approved of such actions, was a low blow that momentarily stole my breath away. Dad would never have stolen from one child to bail out another. I finally replied, my voice tight with controlled emotion. He believed in consequences and personal responsibility. This isn't over, she threatened. I'm going to fix this. Anthony, and I will figure something out. I've already fixed it, I stated firmly. The money is being returned to my account today. And Mom, I've changed my locks and installed security cameras. You no longer have access to my home. She gasped as if I'd slapped her. You're choosing money over family. I can't believe. I cut her off, something I'd rarely done before. No, I'm choosing boundaries and respect over enabling and theft. There's a difference. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence, my heart racing. Despite knowing I was in the right, years of family dynamics made it difficult not to feel guilty. I kept reminding myself, this was not a normal family disagreement. This was theft, plain and simple. Just after 2 p.m., my security app sent an alert to my phone. Motion detected at my front door. I opened the app to see my mother and Anthony standing outside my apartment. Anthony repeatedly ringing the doorbell while my mother tried her key in the lock, looking confused when it didn't work. I watched silently through the app as they eventually gave up and left. Within minutes, my phone lit up with texts from both of them. From Mom, we need to talk about this in person. Stop avoiding us. From Anthony, real mature changing your locks. Mom is crying because of you. Call us now. I silenced my phone and tried to focus on preparing myself for what I knew would be an inevitable confrontation. The bank confirmed that afternoon that the funds had been successfully returned to my account. I immediately transferred them to a new account at a different bank, one my mother had no knowledge of. By evening, I felt emotionally drained, but more resolved than ever. The security camera alerted me again around 7:30. This time, Anthony's ex-wife, Laura, was with them. I decided it was time to face them directly rather than allow this situation to escalate further. I watched through my security camera. As all three of them stood outside my door, Anthony was pounding now rather than ringing the bell, his body language aggressive even on the small screen of my phone. My mother looked distraught, while Laura hung back slightly, appearing uncomfortable with the entire situation. Taking a steadying breath, I walked to the door and opened it, causing Anthony to almost stumble forward. "Come in," I said simply, stepping aside. I had strategically arranged my living room for this confrontation. Financial documents organized on the coffee table, my laptop open showing the security footage of my mother entering my apartment the previous Friday when I had been at work. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Anthony began the moment the door closed behind them. "The mortgage company called me saying the payment was being reversed. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've recovered my stolen money," I replied evenly. "Why don't you all sit down so we can discuss this calmly?" "There's nothing to discuss," Anthony shouted, remaining standing while Mom sank into my couch, looking tearful. Mom was helping me out of a tough situation. That's what family does. With their own money? Yes, I agreed. Not with money taken without permission from another family member. "She didn't steal from you," Anthony protested, his face reddening. "She borrowed it temporarily." I turned to my laptop and pulled up the mortgage statement my mother had shown me. "This says payoff amount, not temporary payment. This was the remainder of your mortgage, over $60,000. That's not borrowing, that's taking." Laura, who had been silent until now, looked confused. "Wait, Anthony told me your mom was giving him money from her own savings to help with a few late payments. You said it was just to catch up," she said, turning to her ex-husband with a questioning look. Anthony shot her an angry glance before turning back to me. "Look, I've been having some financial difficulties. Mom was just trying to help. By stealing my entire emergency fund, money I spent 5 years saving." I countered. "You make plenty of money. You can save it again." Anthony's voice was dismissive, entitled in a way that suddenly made everything crystal clear to me. This was the culmination of a lifetime of different expectations and standards. "Mom," I said, turning to address her directly, "how exactly did you get my account information? I'd like to hear you explain it." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I needed to help Anthony. I knew you kept your financial information in your home office. I was already worried about you having so much money just sitting there doing nothing." "It wasn't doing nothing," I interrupted. "It was providing me with security and peace of mind." "Well, I used my key to check on your apartment last Friday," she continued. "I was just going to ask you about helping Anthony, but then I saw your bank statements and the amount you had saved, and I made a decision as a mother to help both my children by stealing from one to give to the other," I stated flatly. "Don't use that word," she snapped, a flash of anger breaking through the tears. I turned my laptop so they could all see the screen. "This is footage from the security camera I installed this morning. It shows you entering my apartment on Friday, spending almost 40 minutes inside, and leaving with papers in your hand. The timestamp shows this happened while I was at work, without my knowledge or consent. That's invasion of privacy and theft," I continued. "I have every right to file a police report and press charges. You would have your own mother arrested?" Anthony shouted, knocking a book off my coffee table in his agitation. "I don't want to," I said honestly. "What I want is for both of you to acknowledge what happened here and understand why it was wrong." "Nothing wrong happened," Anthony insisted. "Family helps family. You've always been selfish, hoarding your money while I've struggled with real adult responsibilities." "Like what?" I asked, genuinely curious about what he considered struggles that justified theft. "You make nearly the same salary I do, but you buy luxury cars, take expensive vacations, and live in a house that's far beyond your means. Those aren't struggles, Anthony. Those are choices." Laura had moved to the far side of the room, clearly wanting to distance herself from the situation. "Anthony, you told me you were only a couple payments behind. You said nothing about being on the verge of foreclosure." Anthony rounded on her. "Stay out of this. You're not even family anymore. Don't speak to her like that in my home," I said firmly. She's the mother of your children and deserves respect. Oh, so now you're defending her, taking everyone's side but your own family's. Anthony's voice had risen to a near shout. I'm defending what's right, I replied. And what happened here wasn't right. It wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, respect, and boundaries. My mother stood up suddenly. We can fix this. I'll figure out a way to get you the money back eventually. Just tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. It's already fixed, I explained. The transaction has been reversed. My money is back in my account, a new account at a different bank. What? Anthony looked genuinely shocked. But what about my mortgage? That's your problem to solve, I said. Just like it was before Mom decided to steal my money. Anthony's face contorted with rage. He stepped toward me, fist clenched. You smug, self-righteous, Anthony. Laura interrupted sharply. Stop it right now. This isn't helping anything. If you take one more step toward me, I said quietly, I will call the police. I have video evidence of the theft. I have my mother's admission and I have a witness. I nodded toward Laura. Anthony stopped, breathing heavily. This is how you treat family? After everything Mom has done for you? This conversation is over, I said, moving toward the door. I think you all should leave now. Glenn, please, my mother pleaded, fresh tears streaming down her face. We're family. We can work this out. Not tonight. We can't, I replied, holding the door open. I need time, and clearly we all need to reconsider what family actually means. Anthony stormed out first, muttering threats and insults under his breath. My mother paused in front of me, her eyes red and puffy. You've broken my heart, she whispered. You broke my trust, I countered softly. Laura was the last to leave, pausing briefly. I had no idea about any of this, she said quietly. I'm sorry. After closing and locking the door behind them, I leaned against it and finally let my emotions surface. The carefully maintained composure I'd held throughout the confrontation crumbled, and I slid down to sit on the floor, tears streaming down my face. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Yet, they had violated my space, stolen from me, and then acted as if I was the villain for reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Once I had collected myself, I called Scott. How did it go? He asked after I explained the confrontation. About as well as could be expected, I replied wearily. They still don't think they did anything wrong. That's unfortunately common in these situations, Scott said. Listen, why don't you come stay at my place tonight? You sound exhausted, and a change of scene might help. The offer was tempting, but I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, but I need to stay here. I need to reclaim my space and feel secure in my own home again. I understand, Scott replied. Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything. And Glenn, you did the right thing. Don't let them convince you otherwise. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, beginning the difficult process of rebuilding my sense of safety and coming to terms with the new reality of my family relationships. The week following the confrontation was one of the most emotionally challenging periods of my life. Each morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream, only to remember the harsh reality of what had transpired. Going to work provided some semblance of normalcy, but concentrating on clients' financial needs while my own family situation was in shambles proved nearly impossible. On Wednesday morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It turned out to be someone from Anthony's mortgage company. Mr. Thompson, I'm calling regarding a recent transaction involving your brother, Anthony Thompson's mortgage, the representative explained. We received a payment of $65,000 last Friday, which has since been reversed due to a fraud claim. I wanted to verify if you were aware of this situation. Yes, I am, I confirmed. That payment was made using funds taken from my account without authorization. I filed a fraud claim with my bank, which is why the transaction was reversed. There was a pause on the line. I see. Well, in that case, I should inform you that your brother's account is currently 3 months behind on payments. With the reversal of this transaction, the property may be subject to foreclosure proceedings if the arrears aren't addressed promptly. This was news to me. Anthony had only mentioned being a month behind, not 3. The situation was clearly worse than he had admitted. I understand, I replied. But this is a matter my brother will need to resolve himself. By Thursday, I began receiving calls and texts from extended family members. Apparently, my mother had launched a campaign to rally support against me, painting herself as a caring mother who had only tried to help her struggling son, while portraying me as selfish and heartless. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, left a scathing voicemail. "Glenn, I can't believe you would do this to your own mother after everything she sacrificed for you. This is how you repay her? By humiliating her and putting your brother at risk of losing his home? You need to make this right." On the other hand, my father's brother, Uncle Jack, called with a completely different perspective. "Glenn, I just got off the phone with your mother," he began. "She gave me her version of events, but something didn't add up. I wanted to hear your side before forming any opinions." I explained the situation in detail, including the unauthorized access to my apartment and accounts. "That sounds like something your mother would do," Uncle Jack sighed. "She's always favored Anthony and made excuses for him. Your dad used to talk to me about it. He was worried about the pattern, but never found a way to break it." Uncle Jack's support meant more than I could express. "I feel like I'm the villain in their story," I admitted. "You're not," he assured me. "What they did was wrong on every level. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you the bad guy. Your father would be proud of you." By Friday, I'd learned from Uncle Jack that my mother was facing financial problems of her own. In her determination to save Anthony's house, she had apparently promised him the money before she had actually secured it, assuring him she would figure it out. When she discovered the size of my emergency fund, she saw it as the solution to a promise she couldn't otherwise fulfill. "She's been giving Anthony money regularly for years," Uncle Jack explained. "Your dad had put limits on how much she could give him, but with your father gone, well, there's been no restraint. I suspect she's depleted a significant portion of the life insurance money already." The revelation wasn't entirely surprising, but it was disappointing. My careful financial planning for my mother had been undermined by her own enabling behavior. On Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Laura standing alone outside my apartment. After a moment's hesitation, I buzzed her in. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," she said when I opened the door, "but I felt I needed to talk to you directly." I invited her in, offering coffee, which she gratefully accepted. "I want you to know that I had no idea about any of this until I was standing in your living room hearing it all unfold," she began, cradling the mug in her hands. "Anthony told me your mom was helping with a few missed mortgage payments from her own savings. If I had known the truth, I believe you," I assured her. "You looked genuinely shocked that night." She nodded, staring into her coffee. "There's something else you should know. Something I've been trying to get Anthony to address for years, even after our divorce." She took a deep breath. "Anthony has a gambling problem. It started small, sports betting, fantasy leagues, but over the past few years, it's escalated to online poker, casino trips, even day trading. That's more gambling than investing." The revelation hit me like a physical blow, yet somehow also made perfect sense. It explained the constant financial crisis, the mysterious cash shortages despite a good income, the desperation that would lead to accepting stolen money. "Does my mother know?" I asked. "I don't think so," Laura replied. "Anthony is very good at hiding it." "And your mother?" "Well, she's always been ready to believe whatever explanation makes him the victim of circumstances rather than his own choices." After Laura left, I spent hours reflecting on this new information. While it helped explain Anthony's behavior, it didn't excuse my mother's actions or justify the theft. If anything, it made her enabling more destructive, allowing Anthony to avoid facing the real problem. Despite being the wrong party, I found myself struggling with guilt. Had I been too harsh? Should I have been more understanding? A session with my therapist on Monday helped clarify my thoughts. "What you're experiencing is the result of long-established family dynamics," Dr. Palmer explained. "You've been conditioned to put others' needs before your own, especially Anthony's. Standing up for yourself feels wrong because it contradicts that conditioning." "So what do I do now?" I asked. "Maintain your boundaries," she advised. "That doesn't mean cutting off your family, but it does mean being clear about what is and isn't acceptable behavior. You can offer support without being exploited." With that guidance in mind, I began considering what kind of relationship I wanted with my family moving forward. I didn't want to sever ties completely, but I couldn't return to the previous dynamic either. 2 weeks after the initial confrontation, Uncle Jack called with a proposition. "Your mother and Anthony are in serious financial trouble," he explained. "The mortgage company has initiated foreclosure proceedings, and they're finally realizing the gravity of the situation. I've suggested a family meeting to discuss potential solutions, not to pressure you, but to see if there's a way forward that respects your boundaries while addressing the real issues. After careful consideration, I agreed to the meeting, but with conditions. Anthony would need to acknowledge his gambling problem and agree to professional help. And my mother would need to admit that her actions were wrong and commit to respecting my boundaries. The meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday at Uncle Jack's house, neutral territory where everyone could speak freely. When I arrived, the tension was palpable. Anthony sat stiffly on the couch, looking simultaneously angry and defeated. My mother couldn't quite meet my eyes. Uncle Jack had wisely invited his wife, Aunt Meredith, whose calm presence had always helped diffuse family conflicts. "Thank you all for coming," Uncle Jack began. "We're here because our family is in crisis, and we need to find a path forward that addresses the real issues rather than just the symptoms." Anthony immediately began defending himself, blaming the mortgage company's predatory practices and the economy for his financial struggles. But Uncle Jack cut him off. "Anthony, we know about the gambling," he said firmly. "Laura spoke with me yesterday. It's time to stop making excuses and face the truth." The room fell silent. Anthony's face went through a rapid cycle of emotions: shock, anger, denial, and finally a crumpling resignation that was painful to witness. "How did she?" he began, then stopped. After a long moment, he whispered, "I didn't want anyone to know. I thought I could fix it myself." My mother looked genuinely confused. "Gambling? What gambling?" The next hour was difficult but necessary. Anthony finally admitted the extent of his problem. Tens of thousands of dollars lost. Multiple maxed-out credit cards, loans from predatory lenders. He'd been keeping up appearances while his financial life imploded. Too ashamed to admit the truth and too addicted to stop. My mother initially tried to minimize the issue, suggesting it was just a hobby that got out of hand. Uncle Jack firmly redirected the conversation, making it clear that this was a serious addiction requiring professional intervention. Gradually, as the reality sank in, my mother's defensive posture began to crumble. She looked older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her as she finally turned to me. "I was wrong," she admitted quietly. "I was so focused on helping Anthony that I didn't consider what I was doing to you. I violated your trust and your space. I'm sorry, Glenn. Truly sorry." The apology wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The first acknowledgement that her actions had been harmful rather than helpful. "What happens now?" Anthony asked, sounding lost. "Now we deal with reality," I replied. "All of it. Not just the parts we want to see." 6 months after that pivotal family meeting, much had changed in all our lives. I had moved to a new apartment in a secure building with 24-hour doorman service. Not just because of what happened with my family, but because the incident had made me realize how vulnerable I'd been. My new place was actually closer to my office and offered amenities my old condo hadn't. So, in some ways, the forced change had been positive. My emergency fund had been fully restored, now housed in a different bank with additional security measures in place. I'd also revised my entire approach to financial documentation, keeping sensitive information in a small home safe and utilizing encrypted digital storage for backups. The relationship with my family had evolved into something I would describe as cautiously optimistic. We maintained contact, but with clearly established boundaries. Sunday dinners were no longer a weekly obligation, but happened about once a month, usually at Uncle Jack's house, where the neutral territory helped everyone stay on their best behavior. Anthony had initially resisted the idea of treatment for his gambling addiction, insisting he could handle it on his own. But faced with the impending foreclosure of his house and the potential loss of visitation rights with his children, Laura had threatened legal action if he didn't get help. He finally agreed to enter a recovery program. The process hadn't been smooth. He'd had several relapses in the early months, but he was now actively participating in Gamblers Anonymous and working with a therapist who specialized in addiction. He'd had to sell his house and luxury car, moving into a modest apartment that better matched his actual financial situation. My mother had perhaps faced the most difficult adjustment. For decades, her identity had been wrapped up in being the maternal rescuer, the one who could fix any problem for her children, especially Anthony. Being forced to recognize how her enabling had contributed to his problems rather than solving them had shaken her to her core. At Uncle Jack's suggestion, She had started seeing a therapist of her own to address these patterns. She'd also joined a support group for families of people with gambling addictions where she was slowly learning the difference between helpful support and harmful enabling. Our relationship remained somewhat strained, but was improving gradually. The first time she asked permission before stopping by my new apartment, rather than assuming her maternal status granted automatic access, represented a significant step forward in respecting boundaries. Uncle Jack had emerged as an unexpected father figure in my life. His straight-talking wisdom and unwavering support had been crucial during the most difficult days of the family crisis. We now met regularly for lunch or golf, conversations that often centered around memories of my father and the values he had tried to instill in both his sons. Professionally, the experience had actually enhanced my work as a financial advisor. I now had a deeper, more personal understanding of family financial dynamics and the emotional aspects of money management. Several of my clients had commented on my increased empathy when helping them navigate complex family financial situations. I'd even developed a seminar on financial boundaries in family relationships that had become quite popular among my firm's clients. Without sharing the specific details of my personal experience, I was able to draw on the lessons I'd learned to help others establish healthy financial boundaries with loved ones. One unexpected outcome was my closer relationship with Laura and, by extension, my niece and nephew. With Anthony focused on his recovery, I had stepped up as a supportive uncle, taking the kids to baseball games and science museums on weekends when Laura needed a break. These innocent relationships, untainted by the complications of adult financial entanglements, had become a source of genuine joy in my life. On a personal level, I'd learned profound lessons about the nature of family, boundaries, and self-respect. I had discovered that loving your family doesn't mean allowing them to exploit you, and that sometimes the most caring action is refusing to participate in destructive patterns. The most difficult lesson had been accepting that I couldn't control how others perceived my actions. Some extended family members still viewed me as the villain who had refused to help Anthony in his time of need. I had to make peace with being misunderstood by people who didn't know the full story. But those who mattered most, Uncle Jack, Laura, and eventually even my mother and Anthony, had come to recognize that my boundaries weren't about selfishness or lack of love, but about breaking unhealthy cycles and insisting on mutual respect. At our most recent family gathering, Anthony had pulled me aside for a private conversation. "I never properly apologized to you," he said, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I was so caught up in my own problems that I couldn't see how wrong it was to take your money. I'm sorry, Glenn, not just for the money, but for years of, I don't know, expecting you to always be the responsible one while I did whatever I wanted." The apology wasn't perfect, but it was sincere, a sign of the personal growth he was experiencing through recovery. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges. Addiction recovery isn't linear, and old family dynamics have a way of reasserting themselves during times of stress. But we were all moving forward with greater awareness and healthier boundaries. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that protecting yourself financially isn't selfish. It's essential. Your emergency fund isn't just about money. It's about security, peace of mind, and the freedom to make choices based on what's right rather than what's expedient. Family relationships should be built on mutual respect and support, not exploitation and enablement. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to refuse to shield them from the consequences of their actions, allowing them to grow through challenging experiences rather than remaining trapped in destructive patterns. True financial independence isn't just about having money in the bank. It's about having the courage to establish and maintain boundaries, even when doing so is difficult and painful. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members over financial issues? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Share this with someone who might be struggling with similar issues. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in these challenges can make all the difference. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, protecting your financial well-being isn't selfish. It's self-respect.